Good morning, sports fans, and welcome to the Saturday Morning Sports Show here on 97.3 WRUL and 93.3 WROY. The Saturday Morning Sports Show is sponsored by Little Giant Grocery Outlet, Rice Motor Company, Hale Body Shop, First Mid Bank and Trust, Wabash Christian Therapy, Bush & Associates CPAs, People's National Bank, Hamilton Memorial Hospital District, Rush Appliance and Furniture, Citizens National Bank of Albion, Nancy J. Winters CPA, Cherry Street Automotive, Farrell Hospital, Taylor Eye Care, Roark Transport, Wabash General Hospital, and Invenergy. Cole Carter and Chris Myers with you. Hey, Lou Eagleman across the hall, pressing all the right buttons. As the Bulldogs defeat CZR last night, 53-16, the final score. Bulldogs put up 47 points in the first half. And Chris, it's kind of been the script for a few weeks now. Bulldogs, they simply just took care of business.
Yeah, it's what you expected. If you're the Bulldogs coming into this game, you had little doubts that, we were going to win, just to say it flatly. But, the danger in these games is, as we've talked about, playing down to level your competition, and Carmi did not do that last night. They came out and established their dominance early. As we'll recap in the scoring, I believe 3 of our scores were one-play possessions. So
I think 5.
It was 5.
I think it was 5
Actually,
possessions,
yeah.
and it was one-play touchdowns.
When you have 5 possessions where you have one-play touchdowns, your offense is clicking. Yeah. Isaac King did his thing along with Draxod and Andrew Dodson, the offensive line, played incredible as always. Christopher did play scrappy, there and late in the first quarter, put together a good little drive, kind of picked us apart a little bit, getting their quarterback out on the perimeter, throwing some run-pass options. But Bulldog defense was just in the backfield all night, as they have been the past 3 weeks before this, and just an overall complete dominant performance by the Bulldogs.
Bulldogs got started early and often on their first drive, capped it off with a 12-yard touchdown run by Isaac King at the 9:47 mark there in the first quarter. And then CZR would go 3 and out, or I guess you could say 4 and out. A fake punt from their own 31-yard line didn't work. The Bulldogs would score in the very next play. So there's your first one-play touchdown drive, a 31-yard touchdown pass from Warren Legg to Cade Allen. I believe that was the only pass that Warren threw all night. Had plenty of time, delivered a great pass to Cade Allen. It was a little bit of a mix. We haven't seen that play the Bulldogs ran yet. They had Allen lined up on the wing back, ran a wheel route, and a great throw from Warren.
Yeah, and again, that's something you're going to need to see the Bulldogs do at some point, especially in the postseason. If there is a time, we've said it, if the Bulldogs run does ever stall, you got to have that mix in there, and that was just a beautiful play-action pass. Coach Simon alluded to last night that the Christopher defense at one point was just resorting to their linemen, literally leg diving our offensive linemen, and on that play, it happened. They were so committed to the run that play-action pass was just so beautifully open, and Allen with a beautiful catch. Warren just put the ball perfectly to him, and that's good to see, because there's going to be a time we're going to have to call upon him to put the ball in the air, and he did a nice job.
Bulldogs would score again at the 4:44 mark in the first quarter, a 9-yard touchdown run by Draxon Odd. Then CZR put together a nice touchdown drive, resulting in a 15-yard touchdown catch at the 36-second mark there in the first quarter. Bulldogs on the very next play went 54 yards. Isaac King for his second touchdown of the night. Bulldogs led 27-8 after 1 quarter of play. King would score again at the 11:32 mark there in the second quarter, a 33-yard run. Odd would score then on the next drive, a 4-yard touchdown run. Then Andrew Dodson from 13 yards out at the 4:32 mark there in the second quarter to give us a halftime score of 47-8. First team offense got one more possession, or really one more play, and King went 43 yards for the touchdown to make it 53-8 at that point. They were going to win by a final of 53-16. And looking at the composite stats for the entire game, Carmi pretty much dominated every aspect except for passing yards. Obviously, only the one pass attempt. That's really all you needed, but 329 total yards of offense compared to just 209 for CZR. Bulldogs had not turned the ball over, but they took it away from CZR 3 times. 3 interceptions, 2 from Trayton Vickers and 1 from Landon Driscoll. But what really stood out to me, Chris, is the possession time. Bulldogs only had it for 16 minutes, and CZR had it for 32 minutes, and 16 was about 14 minutes too long for the Bulldogs, all they needed.
Normally in football, you think the team that wins the time of possession wins the game. In this case, no, it was the total opposite, because, like I said, 5 of those possessions were one-play scores. So, and what I still like, each week we've seen the Bulldogs have won the turnover battle, and they've kept their penalties low this year. We did have a couple for 10 yards, but you'll take that when you're a coach. If you're that low in penalties, you're winning the turnover battle. And, normally time of possession, this case, it didn't matter. But when your penalties are low, you're not turning the ball over, and you're creating turnovers for the other team, then, you're going to win games, plain and simple.
Rushing wise for the Bulldogs, they were led, of course, by Isaac King, had 7 carries for 187 yards and 4 touchdowns. Draxon with 6 carries and 49 yards and 2 scores. Branton Stockton had 4 carries for 30 yards. Andrew Dodson, 2 carries for 18 yards and 1 score. Warren Legg did rush the ball 1 time for 5 yards. Noah Pollard had 2 carries for 3 yards. Cale Wiggins, 2 carries for 3 yards. And Cade Allen, 1 carry for 3 yards. And again, Legg was 1 for 1 passing through the air with a 31-yard touchdown pass, and that pass was to Cade Allen. So the final score, 53-16. The Bulldogs are 4-0 for the first time since 2016. I was wrong. I told everybody all week 2011, but it was 2016. The last time the Bulldogs were 4-0, but still, and again, 4 weeks, and it's really, you can't point to too many things in these first 4 weeks the Bulldogs have really done wrong, Chris.
They've basically done everything well collectively, both sides of the football. And again, because of our dominant running game, we don't talk about our defense, I think, enough. That the defense has been outstanding. Again, we point to they've created a turnover. I think every game we played this year, there's been a turnover, a pick six, several other interceptions that weren't for touchdowns, but still recovered fumbles, you name it. The defense has done it. And again, the starting unit against, if I go back, Hamco did not allow a point. Against Vanna, they did not allow a point. Sesser, they allowed one score. And last night, 1 score. So really, collectively, in 4 games, the starting offense has given up, 2 scores?
Yeah.
In 4 games. So that's just a testament to how well they're playing. They're well coached, but what I like is just how disciplined they've been, especially in the defensive backfield. Not a lot of egregious coverage errors or things like that. The safeties are where they need to be. The corners are reading their assignments well. They're in good position to make plays. A lot of times against passing teams, what creates open routes is blown assignments, not paying attention to who you're supposed to cover, things like that. This team is not that way. These boys know where they're supposed to be. They know where they're supposed to cover. They read, run, pass well, and they put themselves in good positions to make plays. And I think that's why they've been successful.
And we mentioned it last night. It's tough to replicate a spread passing game in practice. And
Right.
if you're in the BDC, you don't see a whole lot of that throughout the season and to a very successful rate. Every once in a while, you'll have a team that has a good quarterback and they're successful using the spread game. But, Carmi, they played Vienna, who did that. Cesar Valier ran out of that formation. And then, of course, last night, CZR was full spread, no huddle, threw the ball a lot all night long. But you can imagine if this is a Bulldog team that wants to play in November and late October, they're going to face one of these teams from up north, I'm sure, that's going to have a good quarterback that can sling it around. And so this is almost a good test trial as the year goes on to get ready for a team that we could see like that.
Well, it sure is. And the thing is, a lot of that was how they were catching us in our coverage formations when they were rolling the quarterback out, and especially to what we call the weak side, where our corner is having to commit to his receiver or he's the only line of defense once the quarterback gets around the end. It was just basically, okay, am I going to commit to coming up and stopping the quarterback from running, or do I stay with my receiver? And 9 times out of 10, a defensive back, he's going to think about what's in front of him. And they were just putting us in a tough position, and some of that scheme, but some of that's assignment.
That took place last night. So Isaac King had 7 carries for 187 yards. That is good enough for the second highest average by an individual in one game, thanks to, of course, our stat guy, Toby Brown. But what's really interesting is the one guy in front of him, Carl Torrey, against Sesser back in 2005, had 197 yards on 7 carries. And then Logan Weller back in 2014 had 177 yards on 7 carries. So 177 on 7, 187 on 7, and then 197 on 7. But Isaac King, he 187 yards on 7 carries is unreal.
Yeah, and again, a lot of those were 1-score plays. I mean, he's getting the handoff and he's to the house. And the last run he scored on, literally, he was, I thought, stopped 3 different times. Yeah. And every time he would just somehow emerge from a pile of guys on top of him and just keep going. And it's just, well, his leg strength is the reason, but it's just such tenacious runners in this Bulldog backfield. And that's why you see them get that extra yardage, because they just don't quit until they see daylight.
Other scores last night around the area in the BDC. Cesar took down Edwards County 51-0. El Dorado, a big win over Vienna Goreville. I believe that's their first win in a couple of years. They went 0-7 last year, but got the win last night 42-16. Johnson City able to shut out Hamilton County 28-0. Those of you that were listening last night, that was a 7-0 game at halftime. So that was interesting and surprising score, but the Indians pull away to win it by 4 scores. And then later on today, Fairfield will host Flora. And so Flora's 3-0, Fairfield's 2-1. That should be an interesting game there in Fairfield. Other games around Southern Illinois last night in the Little Illini. Robinson defeats Casey Westfield 44-8. Mount Carmel all over Lawrenceville 60-6. Olney over Marshall 42-7. In the River to River, Nashville over Anna Jonesboro 48-7. Carterville defeats DuQuoin 54-19. Benton over Heron 35-6. Murfreesboro defeats Massac County 52-14. And that's about all the a couple of non-conference games. Also, Red Hill defeated Newton 22-17. And all the relevant scores for our area last night in a busy week 4 in high school football in Illinois. We'll take our first break in the morning. When we come back, got a very special guest right here on the Saturday Morning Sports Show on 97.3 WRUL and 93.3 WROY. This is the Saturday Morning Sports Show on 97.3 WRUL and 93.3 WROY. You heard us talking to Kurt Simon last night, and something we forgot to mention, but last week's win over Cesar was win number 500 in the Bulldog football program history. And IHSA released a list 2 years ago about the top 300 winningest programs in the state. Carmi at the time, I believe, was 102nd. That was when we were just at 486. So I had to guess we're somewhere in the high 80s number, but still a big number. 500 wins in program history now for the Bulldogs. But we'll take a second and welcome in our special guest for the morning, the one and only Toby Brown. Welcome in, Toby.
Thanks. Good to be back here. I spent a lot of time in my 20s in this building, so it always kind of feels like coming home being back here, but it's good to be here with you both.
Well, you've been involved in Carmi sports for a long time, but you help us a lot every Friday night doing our stats. So just to give kind of fans at home an idea, and a home game that got over at 9 o'clock, a little bit different, but what time do you say you normally go to bed after a home football or a Friday night football game?
Oh, it's not too bad on Friday night. All I do usually the same night is do this little box score, which you've got in front of you, and that doesn't take a whole lot of time. I send that out to the media. Oh, I'm going to say I take my time about it, probably 30, 45 minutes, and then I do the bulk of the rest sometime during the weekend, Saturday or Sunday. But I tell you, in the early days, before email, before things like that, so I started doing this for the team in 2000 when I started at the newspaper. I would do the complete stats the same night, then get up and drive it to the coaches at the walkthrough at 9 a.m. the next morning. And I remember I'd give a copy to Coach Simon and a copy to Coach Haley, maybe a couple more copies as well. So email has made things a whole lot easier. Been a lot of changes over the years, but been a long time I've been doing it. 23rd year of doing the football stats, and doing other stuff since the mid 90s. I guess was when I started, became the sports director here.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to my next question. You've been around for ever since the 90s, helping out in Bulldog athletics all around. How did you get your start helping out in this community?
It's a great story. It was right here in this very room. I worked at the radio station. I had majored in radio TV in college, and I'd worked here just as a DJ in college in the early 90s, and then got a job here full time. And the manager was a guy named Roger Swan. And let's see, how did it start? Okay, so it started, they needed someone to be the color commentator on basketball broadcast with Steve Cox, who I wish you would have been alive to hear him, Cole, because he's. If you ask your dad or people our age or older about Steve Cox, he was just he was born to do play-by-play for Carmi. He loved Carmi, and he was so amazing at it. But his color commentator had left. It was a guy named Rich. I shouldn't say that. I can't remember. I think there had been a couple more since then. And so Roger Swan asked me to be his color commentator, and I said no. Then he asked me again, and I said no again. First 4 times he asked me, I said no. But he wouldn't take no for an answer, so I ended up doing that. And then shortly after that, he told me, I need someone to be the sports director here at the radio station, because Bob Miller had left at that time. And all he said was, I just need someone to get me all the schedules for the basketball and football. That's really all he left it at. It didn't say anything about content or anything like that. He said, and I'll pay you $100 a month for it. So I did that, and the content was what I took seriously. I started calling coaches and getting results and putting them on the air, which that wasn't going on at the time. Again, because Bob Miller had left at that. Bob Miller had done that whenever he was, but that's how it all started. And then I went to the newspaper in 2000 and pretty much been steady ever since then. I should say I don't know if I would have stayed in it if it weren't for a man named John Evers, who came into my life also shortly after I started doing basketball. I happened to go to the same church as Mr. Evers, and we would both sit up in the balcony. And I remember first Sunday after I did my first game with Steve, which was at Lawrenceville in 1994, Mr. Evers coming up to me, didn't know who he was, and saying, you're doing a great job. If you need anything, I'll certainly help you. And he was such a great help, as you know. You were talking about those 500 wins. We would not know that if it were not for John Evers.
Yeah.
John Evers spent 50 years of his life combing through microfilm in libraries, compiling all these sports records. And when he got too old to take care of them, again, I refused 3 or 4 times. I didn't want to take them because I didn't know if I was going to stay in Carmi long term, honestly, at that time. But eventually I took him over whenever he couldn't take them on anymore. So anyone who enjoys any things like those stats, John Evers is the person to be thanked. And he's no longer with us, but his widow Karen is. So, tell Karen Evers thank you next time you see her out.
Yeah. I happen to be fortunate enough to have a copy of one of the first record books he did for Bulldog football history. It goes up to about the mid-90s, so it's kind of old, but to what you just said, he was just the pioneer of that. And my question is, I know he was your inspiration for doing what you do. What did you learn from him? And tell the folks at home how you've just basically carried the torch with this and what you do to track records now and keep things updated, not just football, but basically all sports for Carmi.
Well, just to see, I'm going to get emotional here when I talk about Mr. Evers.
Yeah.
To see his love for everybody, but especially the athletes, coaches, to see his unwavering support. Didn't matter if we were having a bad season, he would encourage kids, encourage coaches, and to see the way his former students, he was also a teacher and administrator and a coach here. And if you would ever see the way that his former players and students just loved him so much, it's hard for that not to rub off on you. Yeah. The sense of, I guess you'd say, duty that he felt for Carmi. And John Evers was not born in Carmi. John Evers grew up in Salem with John McDougal. John McDougal recruited John Evers to come here in 1956, I believe it was. So for a guy who didn't grow up here and had that love for Carmi, it's just hard not to rub off on that. And also I felt that too. I mean, I grew up here, but whenever you get involved in the sports community, which I did in the mid 90s, and you just got great people who are very welcoming to you. Not only coaches, players, fans. It's it gets to you. It gives you a sense of belongingness, and I have friends who live in big cities, and that's fine for them. But sometimes they'll say, "Yeah, you're still living in Carmack." My response is always, "People love me here. Why wouldn't I? What's wrong with living in a place where people love you?"
Yeah.
I get, what's wrong with that? So as far as what I do, not as much as I used to when I worked at the newspaper. But just try to get results, try to carry on the stats that he had. Now, obviously, there were some sports that he has more information on, mainly boys basketball and football, because those are the two sports that have been played the longest at Carmi. But he has at least something on every sport, and I try to maintain that as well. I kept all of my files for the 12 years that I worked at the Carmi Times, and my dream is, if I ever win the lottery, or if I'm still mentally capable enough, if I ever get to retire, is to get all that information together in websites. But that would be a full-time job. I would have to, like I say, have to either win the lottery or wait until I retire for that. So, but it's just a matter of getting information. A lot of time from coaches for football. I just keep it myself because football's hard. There's a lot of stats in a football game, and it takes a lot of help, and I've had a lot of great people that have helped me over the years for it. None more so than Brian Weaver, who's been with me for, I don't want to say 15, 16 years. It's been a long time. And he doesn't get paid. None of the people that help me get paid for it. They're doing it just out of their willingness for their community. So I owe a great deal of gratitude to all those people who've ever helped me, including Chris. Chris has helped me in the past as well.
Well, we can attest just to what you do. Just in front of me is the stat sheet from last night, and we can have these numbers in front of us. And quite honestly, we just say, hey, folks, wait till tomorrow. The stat man will have it. Big Tobe will have it for us, and what you do, your willingness to do this, we could just say thank you over and over for what you do. Just you make it easy for us or so many people to be able to see this broken down. And you're volunteering yourself to do it. So thank you from me, from just this whole community. Just if I could tell you folks at home, should be so grateful for what Toby does willingly. He's just doing it as a labor of love every week, and it means so much to us. But for the parents of these kids that are playing to be able to see these things, and the community to be able to pick up. Well, now it's get on the net, get on the web, and see the stats. Just thank you for what you do. Just want to. Sincere thank you.
I appreciate hearing that, and every time I hear thank, I feel like that's a thanks in turn to Mr. Evers, because that's why I do it, because of Mr. Evers.
Well, interesting story, but I could interject a personal story about Mr. Evers. I was 14 years old. I remember it was 1988. I was getting ready to go into high school, and back then we didn't have junior level football. We didn't have junior high football like a lot of youngsters today are fortunate to play. So I knew that I wasn't going to have the speed to be in the backfield. My dad was a lineman. He played center, and so I wanted to be a center. Well, lo and behold, my dad had told Mr. Evers, what position I wanted to play. He comes over to my house one day, knocks on the door, and says, "Come on outside, son. I'm going to teach you how to snap a football." So there in our backyard, there on Herbert Avenue, he's under center, and he's teaching me how to time my snaps and how to do it. And he said, "Now you're going to do this every day. Every day. This is how you're going to get good at it." I was 14 years old, and that was my first introduction to football. And how fortunate I look back on it, how fortunate was I to have the man who's considered Carmi Sports coming over teaching a 14-year-old kid, 120 pounds soaking wet, how to snap a football. But that was him. That was him.
Exactly. That's John Evers. Center was a position he knew a lot about. I don't know if you knew this. His son played center for
Johnny.
him. Yeah. And was all state, I believe.
People might remember Johnny went on to become the athletic director at Castle High School over in Evansville, and he was a football coach over there for a long time.
Yeah. Now his son was a football coach
Marshall
as well. Yeah, he did coach at Marshall, then some other places. And what I loved about that is, so Mr. Evers' grandson is coaching. At this time, he was an assistant. He wasn't a head coach, but he was coaching at Marshall in 2000. 2006 when Carmi played Marshall in the playoffs, okay? So Mr. Evers' grandson is a coach on Marshall's team. So which side of the field do you think Mr. Evers sat on?
Yeah, I'm going to guess Carmi.
He was on Carmi's side,
Yeah.
wearing his maroon, and there were no second thoughts about that.
Yeah, that's his loyalty. Yeah, and his grandson probably knew that before the game.
Yep, I'm sure.
Well, one of the coolest things I've seen, Toby, is you used to post these photos on your Facebook page. You call them Throwback Thursday. You'd post some photos from the early 2000s of some just really cool Carmi sports moments. And, of course, I was young back then, don't recall any of that. But one of the things that I wish I could have witnessed was that 99 basketball team.
Yeah.
And you had the chance to be there courtside with the awesome, legendary Roger Hobbs every single game. What was that like? Of course, the only basketball team, I believe the only one that's ever went to state. And
Yep.
haven't won a regional since then, and that's kind of the gold standard of that team. It was that 99 team. What was that like to
Yeah,
follow that team?
well, great in a word. So I was, and the senior, everyone on that team I liked, as well as coaches as well. But those senior boys were only 10 years younger than me. I was young back then. I had hair, brown hair back then. So those four seniors who were Matt Hines, Dusty Odd, Eric Walker, Nathan Hamilton were kind of little brotherly to me. I felt that way toward them, just adored them. But that was such a cool experience, the way the whole community got behind it. And we'd been good. We'd been building since 97. From 96, which was Steve Cox's last year, we went 5-20. And then the next year, 21-10, and went to the Super Sectional with Wade Ackerman, David Mears, Justin Simmons, that team. Todd Large was on that team. So we'd been building. Then in 98, we were really good too, but we got upset by Edwards County at the Fairfield Regional when a kid named Nathan Stevenson made a shot from his butt at the very end of the game to beat us. But to answer that question was just fabulous, and I've got a great story about that involving this room right over here beside us. So late in that season, in the postseason run, I think it's the weekend before the sectional, Art Ackerman, who was Wade Ackerman's dad, still is, had asked if I had any old tapes of Wade playing, cassette tapes. There was this thing called cassettes, Cole. You put them, and whenever you would record one to another, you would put one in and play on the left side, then you'd hit record on the right side, and you had to let the whole thing play in order for it to record. So Art had asked me to get him some tapes of Wade's games. I didn't have very many. Stupidly, I didn't ask for very many of those games to be recorded. If I knew Steve was going to pass away, I certainly would have gotten more games recorded. But anyway, playing this game from, I think, Wade's senior year, junior year, somewhere around there. And so Steve Cox is doing the play-by-play, and I'm just kind of listening as I do other stuff in my apartment. And Steve said the famous words. Chris is going to know what these words are. That class of 99 was kind of, a lot of people knew they were going to be good from the time they were in middle school. So I think they were 8th graders at this time. And Steve Cox says on the broadcast, all I can tell you is Carmi will shine in 99. So I hear that. I just happened to be listening while that was going through. And so that registered me, I've got that on tape. I need to do something with that. Wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I just thought I need to do something with that. Then we win the sectional, and so then driving back home, the sectional was in Newton, and coming back home, I think, okay, tomorrow I'm doing something with that Shine in 99. I'm going to get together an audio piece. And I remember that next day, I spent the whole day in this room right here, like 16 or 17 hours putting that piece together. And I remember before I came in here, my friend Quentin Runyon, who lived here at that time, tried to get, I don't remember what he wanted me to do, but said, let's go do so. No, man, I really want to do this. And one of the few times where I put work before personal life, or wait a minute, I normally do that. One of the few times that I don't regret it is that I got in here, did that piece, which if you're on my Facebook, I've got a video to it somewhere. Mm-hmm. It was called Shine in 99, and I just did a bunch of clips of the radio broadcast from that year, but I started it and ended it with Steve saying, all I can tell you is the Bulldogs will shine in 99. So that's one of the things that I'm most proud of.
And that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That is one of the coolest videos I've ever seen.
Yeah, that is probably the thing I'm probably most proud of at the radio station. At the newspaper, probably the work that I'm most proud of is in 2009, our girls track team won the sectional, first and only time in history. It was a great story as to how it came about. We won it on the last lap of the last race of the day when a Harrisburg girl named Tanya Tuttle passed a Benton runner. That's what allowed us to win it. Benton had won the sectional 8 or 9 years in a row. They were the defending state champs. Our coach was Eric Dixon, who's a friend of mine, was my classmate. Just a lot of great stories about that. One of it, which was Lauren Winkleman was on that team, which I believe is Haley's older sister, I think.
It is. Yep.
And I just think Lauren, every Carmi sports fan should know Lauren Winkleman's name. I think she is definitely the best female track athlete we've ever had, and maybe best ever. She was just incredible and dominant. And I wish more people knew the name Lauren Winkleman because she was such a great athlete, great person too. But the story, writing that story, and I did a little sidebar about Eric as well on that final lap, is probably the thing that I'm proudest of in my whole writing career at the Carmi Times. So I know you didn't ask that, but I offered that.
So good.
I could sit here and talk to you about this stuff all day. But one thing I will ask is, again, I refer to your Facebook page a lot. I don't creep on you, just to let you know, but you do just have a lot of really cool stuff on there. And I'm a history, I wouldn't say history nerd, but stuff about old Carmi sports teams really piques my interest for some reason. And what my question is, what is your favorite photo, rather that you've taken or Brian's taken or somebody that just kind of solidifies Carmi athletics? That one of those things where this picture has more words that define it than just what the picture seems. And I know it's kind of hard to explain, but that just, I've seen a lot of cool photos that you've posted about teams in the past and what this team meant and what this picture meant. So if you can think of one at the top of your head, what is the coolest picture that you might have framed in your office or just at home, whatever it may be?
You should see my office, by the way. I've got I'll show you pictures, but I've got a lot of photos up, including one of you at the mic. That would be tough. It might be Brian Weaver's cover to the Winter Sports Tab in 1999. Brian is a Notre Dame fan, so he got those 4 boys that I was talking about up on horses, and so that's how they got the nickname the Four Horsemen. Which I'm a nickname guy. I love nicknames. Steve Cox gave me the nickname Uptown, which I named my column after that. I called it Uptown World as an homage to Steve. So I love nicknames. And so that I've never seen a nickname that stuck quite as well as the Four Horsemen with those 4 guys. They still, I think, get referred to as the Four Horsemen. So it might be that. I took one in 1999 at the end of a football game. It was week 9. We beat Christopher, and that was our first playoff that clinched the playoffs for the first time since 1975. I can remember that picture. Kurt is standing, Coach Simon is standing, and the players are kind of kneeling, I think, and my friend Mike Strong is holding up his helmet high in that. I like that picture an awful lot because breaking that playoff drought, and those longtime Carmi football fans know we had a long time between playoff appearances, and then we've, what Coach Simon has done here has been incredible. So those are probably the 2 that come to my mind, but I'm a picture guy too. Love photos. I loved taking photos whenever I had to do it at the Times every day. It lost a little of its luster, but now that I don't have to every day, I've kind of gotten that luster back for it. So
I had one history question. Here's my put you on the spot here. Carmine Fairfield are playing this Friday. How far back do we go? Would that probably be our oldest opponent? Maybe.
I think not. I think we played McLeansboro in 1899.
Wow.
But I would have to look that up. I'd have to look that up. It might also have been Fairfield as well. The more I think about it, I think you're right. I think it was Fairfield. McLeansboro might be our oldest in basketball. I'd have to look that up.
Okay, I was curious.
Yeah, I know we played in the late
at least 100 years we played each other.
Give Toby his laptop about 5 minutes. He can answer any question you've got.
I was just curious, going back to how long we played Fairfield. I know it's been a while, and so and a lot of golden eras. And I guess if you could, this is more of a dork question again, putting my thinking cap on as far as the dominant eras of high school sports for Carmi, I'm going to guess based on state championships, it's golf. But I'm going to say the 1970s might be our most successful era as far as wins, losses in every sport. We had 2 undefeated football teams in the 70s. We had a basketball team that made it super sectional.
And volleyball was also very good.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
That was a great run there.
Yeah.
We had a great run in the late 90s, boys and girls, both basketball, baseball, softball.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's good in the 50s as well. I mean, just
have to
been a lot.
research
But
which era.
but there wasn't girls sports back then.
Right.
Girls sports didn't come about till 1974. So, which, by the way, just
Georgia
a little, Georgia Bramlett. Little fact about that just still blows me away. Girls sports started in 1974, and in that time, NCOE's volleyball program has had 2 coaches. 2.
Wow.
Since girls sports began. Kathy Black and Jacqueline Short, who's Jacqueline Melton now. That stat just blows me away. And Kathy Black is still coaching, which I have just such a huge amount of admiration for both of those people. But that's one little fact that just blows me away. I wish more people thought about that too, especially for what Kathy Black has done. She deserves great deal of credit when all these people who were, this was a new thing. You didn't go to school to become a coach if you were a female because there weren't high school girls sports. So you had these people who were usually the PE coaches. They had to learn how to coach all these sports. And boy, did she ever learn.
Yeah,
she was great.
Done great. And like I said, girls basketball in the 90s really took off. Had some great teams there in the early 2000s. And so you name it, our girls sports program has done great.
Yeah, Larry Garapy and Don Dixon in the 90s built a couple of dynasties, for sure.
They did.
Well, Toby, I mean, I know I could talk to you all day about this stuff, but last question before we let you go. If there's one moment that we haven't talked about already that it is at the top of your list of your favorite moment here in Carmi, what's it got to be?
Might be, I've already talked about 99, talked about 2009. It might be the 2003 football season when we beat Carterville in the playoffs. Here's why. We had, it was our first year in the Black Diamond. We were coming from the NEC. And we were either 4-5 or 5-4 the year before. I know we lost our last game of the season at Christopher to knock us out of the playoffs. So, and Carterville was the big bad beast of the Black Diamond. So I don't think they gave Carmi any credence at all. And so we go in week 1 and we beat them. And then, so that was our first win in the Black Diamond Conference. I had a great lead to my article on that, too. I remember that as well. But after the game, I go over and interview their coach. And, I mean, he can see I'm from Carmi. I'm wearing a Carmi shirt and got my tape recorder. And he says, oh, they just played bad. And he said these words, someone will beat Carmi. He said those exact words, and he was hoping to have another chance at him. Well, he got his other chance at him, and we beat him again in the playoffs. And I remember in that game, in the fourth quarter, we were trailing. It was 4th and 2 on our 42, and Charlie David took an end around and scored, and that was the last score of the game. I think we won at 19-14. So that game was awful satisfying to me.
Awesome. Well, again, Toby, can't thank you enough for all you do for our town and our sports programs, just not just the stats, what you do every Friday night, but everything you do all year long. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you guys. And Cole, I just want to tell people I worked with Steve Cox. And let me tell you, Cole Carter is just as good as Steve Cox. And for me, having known you since you were a little boy and watching Steeler games with you and your dad, I just can't tell you how proud I am of what you have become and the future that is in front of you.
I appreciate that.
I'll second that.
Yep.
Amen.
Thank you, Toby. We'll take our final break of the day right here on the Saturday Morning Sports Show on 97.3 WRUL and 93.3 WROY. Well, we definitely could have had a 3-hour show today with Toby Brown. Again, a big thanks to him swinging by. And, man, just so much Carmi sports history in one guy's brain. It's unreal.
Any era, you can ask him what, and he'll rattle it off. It's just, his mind is a computer, literally.
So we'll wrap up today's show going through our terrible 10 picks real quick. And I'm telling you guys, if you're at home and you've got FanDuel DraftKings, whatever Chris says, just write it down, because Chris went 10-0 2 weeks ago. He went 9-1 last week.
Did I really?
You went 9-1 last week.
Blind squirrel finds an acorn.
And you said that you thought you got all your NFL picks right, and the only one you got wrong was BYU and Baylor. BYU won in overtime, so you were that close to having back-to-back 10-0, and I just would have said we're never doing picks again. But anyway, so Chris currently leads the standings. I'm in a hole. Chris is 25-5. I'm 18-12. So 3 college games and 7 NFL games from this upcoming week, and we'll fly through these. Chris, today, 12 BYU at 25 Oregon.
I'm going to go ahead and stay status quo. I'm going to go BYU in that one.
I have got to gain some ground or lose some ground, either or. I'm going Oregon here. At home, I know they played bad against Georgia a couple weeks ago, but I'm going to go with the Ducks. Number 13, Miami. At number 24, Texas A&M.
A&M is really young, but Jimbo Fisher will be ran out of Texas if he loses today. So I'm going to take the Aggies in a tight one.
I'm going against Miami. I think A&M still is just having a hard time recovering from that upset loss last week, so I'm going to go against you here again. I'm going Miami. One we both can probably agree on, number 6, Oklahoma at Nebraska. I'll go with the Sooners.
I will do the same. The Scott Frost era ended very ugly last week, so I'll take the Sooners. On
to NFL games tomorrow. A couple interesting matchups. The first one, the Dolphins at the Ravens. I am going the home team here with the Ravens.
And I will do the same.
Yeah, Ravens looked pretty good in their week 1 win last week. Buccaneers at the Saints.
Well, I tell you, if there's been some kryptonite for Brady, back in the AFC, it was the Ravens. In the NFC, it's the Saints. So, but, no more Sean Payton. No more. I'm going to go ahead and say Brady gets the monkey off his back here, and they beat New Orleans.
I'm going to agree with you there. I'm going to go with the Buccaneers as well. Commanders at the Lions. Lions almost got the win against the Eagles last week. Commanders are 1-0. I'm going to say the Lions get their first win of the year tomorrow.
I'm going to go ahead and lean with you there and say the Lions have been close, but no cigar. Maybe they get over the hump this week. I'll go ahead and go with you there.
Final afternoon game for tomorrow, the Cardinals at the Raiders. Cardinals, a really embarrassing loss last week against the Chiefs. I'm going to go Raiders here with the home team.
And the Raiders play in what is probably the toughest division in football. When you got the Chargers and Chiefs, they're with you, and the Broncos. The Broncos will bounce back. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to go with the Raiders.
And then tomorrow night's contest, the Bears at the Packers. I think the Packers are going to bounce back and win this one.
I would say so, too. Plus, I'm mad the Bears beat the Niners last week. So they got every break in the book, every bad call and rain. Yeah, I'll stop there.
2 games on Monday night. The first one, the Titans at the Bills. I'm going Bills by about 3 scores.
I'm going to go ahead and stick with the Bills as well. Yeah. Josh Allen is a player.
And the last one on Monday night, Vikings at the Eagles. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles here.
Very interesting game. I'm going to go opposite. I'm going to go with the Vikings in that one.
I don't blame you. Yeah. Vikings looked really really good in their first win last week against the Packers. But it should be a good one on Monday night. So there's our terrible 10 picks for today. Real quick, want to thank all of our sponsors for Carmi Football and the Saturday Morning Sports Show this year. Little Giant Grocery Outlet, Rice Motor Company, Hale Body Shop, First Med Bank and Trust, Wabash Christian Therapy, Bush & Associates CPAs, People's National Bank, Hamilton Memorial Hospital District, Rush Appliance and Furniture, Citizens National Bank of Albion, Nancy J. Winters CPA, Cherry Street Automotive, Farrell Hospital, Taylor Eye Care, Roark Transport, Wabash General Hospital, and Invenergy. So again, the Bulldogs will host Fairfield on Friday night. It is homecoming night. We'll have the pregame show for you on WRUL and the WRUL Sports YouTube channel at 6:45 with kickoff coming up at 7 o'clock. And, Chris, anything you want to add before we hit the road today?
Well, I just encourage everybody, get out to the game next Friday night. Yeah. It's going to be a fantastic football game, a great week in our community, homecoming week. You're going to see kids out doing different events this week. I don't know if tomorrow they play the...
Yes, tomorrow is the Powder Puff game, which fans can attend, yes.
Yeah, parents come out and watch your kids have a good time, and homecoming parade will be this week. I believe that's usually Friday morning.
Sometime Friday.
Events going on all week. A lot of school spirit. Come out. Let's get this whole community involved. Let's see a wave of maroon and white all throughout this town. And if you can get out there next Friday night, I would encourage you to do so because I think it's going to be a fantastic football game.
Absolutely. So, for Chris Myers, for Haley Winkleman across the hall, and a big thanks to Toby Brown, I'm Cole Carter. Have a great weekend, sports fans.